Hello, I'm Sandra, a patient care coordinator of MTI. I'm here with Emil today. They came here to undergo the Neridronate treatment for their CRPS. We're actually doing the last infusion today. So I'm gonna ask them a couple of questions to see how the week went. Emil, do you wanna tell me a bit how it all started first?
Yeah, definitely. So it's now January 2023. It all kind of started March 2022, so almost a year ago. And it just started out as a bit of Achilles tendonitis. We're now thinking from a scan I might have had a small fracture in my heel bone. I think that's where a lot of the pain was coming from. But at the beginning I was able to walk, like with kind of a limp, but I could still walk. And it was healing pretty well. But then I was at my job and I pushed it too hard a few months later and it started to get worse again.
Yeah.
Over last summer, it just was would get better and worse and couldn't really tell why. And then it was around August or September that it just dramatically got worse. And that's when I couldn't bear weight on my foot anymore and I had to use either a wheelchair or a knee scooter and didn't really know what was going on and had a podiatrist tell me, oh, it's probably just really bad tendonitis, it'll get better. I was kind of confused by that because
doesn't look like it. No.
Yeah, usually tendonitis, it's not like you put your foot on the ground and you're like shocked, right? So then I finally got a diagnosis from a really good doctor who knew what was going on, and and that was in September. So I don't know exactly when it started, but I've known that I had it for
about a year, which is not a long time. That's good. Yes, this is the last infusion. Do you want to tell us how it was this week? How you feeling now? How the infusions went and the clinic in general?
Yeah, definitely. Honestly, they've been great. Like, I really love the clinic. I feel very cared for. The nurse is really nice. I've been telling you guys I'm usually pretty scared of needles, but she's made me very comfortable. I've actually been so nervous to get an IV like my whole life, and this was my first time, and it's been okay. And yeah, I just feel very cared for at the clinic. It's nice that you guys hang out with me and chat. I don't feel like I'm being like left alone or anything. There definitely have been some side effects that haven't been great, but I'm not upset about it because it just means it's working and I like know what it is and it's not like, oh, I'm sick. It's like, oh, it means it's working. And just some mild nausea and headaches, nothing I couldn't handle.
So nothing major.
Yeah, nothing major. But just having to rest a bit and like listen to my body when I need to rest.
Yeah, of course.
Because I'm in Italy, I want to like go out and do things, but sometimes you have to listen to that and just like take it easy. So, but yeah, nothing.
Yeah, you're not here in a hurry. You just here, to do the treatment and then of course rest a bit.
Yeah. Exactly.
Speaking of resting, how was the hotel? Did you like it?
Yeah, I loved the hotel. It was really great. Just felt very comfortable. I mean, the room itself was really nice, and it was nice having the light therapy that I could do every day. It felt really nice on my foot because I have the cold CRPS, so it helps warm my foot, and I could tell afterwards the color would change, which was nice.
That's right.
And yeah, aside from the room itself, just love the vibe of the hotel. Like the restaurant was really great. Getting to eat lunch and dinner every day. The waiters are all really like welcoming, and my dad and I love having breakfast together every morning. In the breakfast that's provided is really delicious. Like, European breakfast for us is very exciting because American breakfast is pretty boring. So
it's salty mainly. That's
why. Having the spread.
I mean, it's also mainly sweet actually, but
right. The spread of all the things was really good. So just really enjoyed staying at the hotel and felt very welcomed and cared for. It's a good experience.
I think it was yesterday. They actually went to do some tourism. It was on Tuesday, I think. They went with my colleague Lorena to Verona to do some sightseeing, and yesterday they also went to the Lake Garda in Simeone. That was very nice. What was your favorite moment, you would say, from this past week? I know you still have some time left before going back home, but
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a few things. It's hard to pick, but I think to pick a general thing for the whole week, like the people for sure, like getting to know all of you has been a highlight. Like you all made me feel very welcome and have made it a fun experience instead of just being here. It's a whole experience. It's not just being here for the treatment. Like it's very much, you all are very good hosts and tour guides, and you fill a lot of roles, which is very impressive. So yeah, I think the overall highlight has been getting to know all of you and spend time with all of you. A few moments would be definitely the lunch from yesterday was really special. Getting to hang out with everyone and talk about CRPS more and learn about your mission was was really cool. And yeah, also just some of the sightseeing. I think especially like Garda was my favorite because it was just so beautiful and like just getting to see the old buildings, and I love the water. Being by the water was so nice, and like we sat at a cafe and had like coffee and gelato, and it was just like so nice. And I kind of thought, I mean, I knew I would do some sightseeing on this trip, but I kind of have had this idea with my foot, since it's like mobility is so hard, that I wouldn't get to travel for a very long time. I was just kind of expecting like, oh, you know, I won't really get to like see much for the next few years because I can't walk, but like being able to like experience like not just the clinic but the sightseeing was just like very good for my mental health, I think, and like seeing new things and getting out of like, you know, when you have a mobility issue, it's so hard to get yourself places, and I do my best and I have friends that take me out, but it's like you get kind of stuck, you know? Of course. So being somewhere where you all are so accommodating and can push me around and it's no problem, and it makes the whole experience a lot more special, I think. So.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You're very kind.
Oh, no, I mean, it's all true. It's all very true. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's been a life-changing experience for sure. It's been amazing.
Yeah, we hope to have you back eventually, you know, without the CRPS. And
right, no, I really want to visit. I mean, I definitely want to come back to Italy. I knew before that I wanted to travel here, but I don't know, I'm sold. I love it here. It's great. Great vibes. Yeah.
Well, Emily's going back home this Sunday, and we hope, you know, we wish them the best, really, so we try to get better and be back here.
Yeah. What you all say, back as a tourist, not a...
Yeah, exactly. Back as a tourist and not as a patient, yeah.
Right, definitely. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi guys, this is your host Emily. Welcome to this new episode of Let's Talk About CRPS. Today with us we have Emil, a CRPS warrior. Hi Emil, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, we're excited to have you. Why don't you tell all the listeners a bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Emil. I'm from Portland, Oregon. I'm 25 years old. I'm currently living in Portland, Oregon, still, and I am an outdoor educator. Okay. So I work with kids. Yeah, I work with 6th graders and high schoolers, and really love my job a lot. And yeah, when I'm not at work, I love hanging out with friends and family, and being in nature and drawing, and yeah, that's what comes to mind. Yeah.
We did receive a drawing that you did of Vicenza. I think it went really on all the social medias that we have because we were so emotional about it. I think we posted the picture. It was so beautiful. You're hella talented. You're so good.
I appreciate that.
I wanted to ask you, what is it that you do? Like, what's your job exactly? What is it that you do with the children?
Yeah, great question. So I work for a program called Outdoor School that has been around in Oregon since the 1960s.
Oh, wow.
And it basically guarantees every 6th grader in the state of Oregon in the US a free week of outdoor education when they're in 6th grade. Yeah. So it's a really cool experience. Thank you. It's lovely, and it's a cool experience because, you know, summer camp is oftentimes expensive, but outdoor school, you don't have to pay. So every 6th grader gets to go. And since I'm from Oregon, I actually got to do it when I was in 6th grade. And then I volunteered for them in high school. And then since I loved it so much, I was like, oh, well, when I graduate college, I want to go back and work there for at least a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting because since they stay overnight, some of the staff's job is more focused on the science and how to like teach that, but other staff's job is more focused on making sure the kids are comfortable, helping them with homesickness. like helping with conflicts that might arise. So I do more of that kind of
Okay.
stuff. I do more like the social emotional job, which I actually really like. I like taking care of the sixth graders who are sad and or who are happy. You know, I like that part of it. So yeah, that's kind of like, and I work on a team of other people in my position, about 11 of us, and
Okay.
yeah, over the course of, I've been working at outdoor school for about 3 years, and some of them have become like very close friends, which is lovely.
Aww.
So yeah,
That's
it's a
pretty
great,
cool.
great place. Thank
It's
you.
a great initiative. I love it. Everybody should have that.
Agreed, agreed. I really think so. I think it's really good for the kids.
Yeah, 100%. So how long have you had CRPS for?
Yeah, so I'm actually coming up on almost 2 years now of having CRPS. Yeah, I was diagnosed September 28th of 2022. So it's been
Okay.
almost 2 years. Yeah.
And how did it start?
Yeah, so it started, so yeah, if my diagnosis was September, it started that previous spring. So it started spring of 2022. And it kind of started as, I think, either bad tendonitis in my foot or a stress fracture or something. And I could still walk at that point, and my pain was bad, but it wasn't like quite at CRPS level yet. So I was walking, but like very like inhibited, I guess, or I wasn't able to walk like miles and miles a day. Like at work, I kind of had to adjust how much I could walk because I work outside, obviously. So
yeah, and you work with kids, so you must be running all the time everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So my boss was very supportive, and he actually got me a golf cart to drive around.
Oh.
So that like I could walk short distances, but I didn't have to like hike really
Yeah.
far because my body couldn't handle that at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what was tough is as the session of work went on in the spring, I was getting better. Like I was finding a balance of walking and resting, and my progress was going up. But then, for whatever reason, probably CRPS, that summer, it just started getting worse. And I was like, oh, and I didn't know what was going on. And then it was about August of that year that I couldn't bear weight on my left foot anymore. And it was, the symptoms, right, of it's discolored and it hurts to the touch, and the sort of classic symptoms of CRPS. That started happening probably around July or August. And I was like, oh, this is weird. Like, why is it getting so much worse? And why aren't the treatments that the doctors have given me working? Like, and my family was confused. I was confused. We just didn't know what was going on. So there was about a month and a half there of not being able to walk and not knowing why, and thinking it was just like bad tendonitis. But that's not usually true when you're 23, that you can't walk because of tendonitis.
Yeah.
So that was kind of how it started.
Okay. And did it take a long time to diagnose you? Who gave you a diagnosis? What type of doctor was it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I had one pretty unfortunate, I've had, I think a lot of CRPS patients have had not great doctor's appointments at times, and I'm sure, you all are familiar with this.
Yes.
So yeah, very much so. So I was talking to a lot of different doctors and kind of being referred all over the place, and eventually I started seeing a podiatrist.
Okay.
And I actually had been on the phone with a really good podiatrist who, he still thought it was something with my tendon, but he was taking it really seriously. He was like, okay, it sounds like it's really bad. We might like give you some injections or something. Like let's take that next step. But then I went for an appointment in person, and I went to a different location, so I saw a different podiatrist. And he didn't have any of my notes of like what had been happening. So he just was kind of like dove into the thing and was like, well, like you'll be fine. And he even like took my foot and like bent it to like test the flexibility. And I was like in so much pain. I was like, oh my God, like it was not good. And so he was the one to be like, yeah, it's just tendonitis, you'll be fine. And I was like,
sir.
Okay. Yeah, literally. I was like, sir, I don't know about that. But then, so my parents and I were kind of at a loss. We're like, okay, I have Kaiser. No one in Kaiser was really taking it seriously. So we had at the time, my brother's girlfriend's dad had really bad, a lot of connections there. But, yeah, he had really bad Achilles problems and saw a doctor through a different insurance.
Okay.
And so my parents, luckily I have very lovely parents and also parents who financially can support me medically.
Mm-hmm.
So they were like, go see this guy. He's recommended. We'll pay for it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And so it was then September that I went to see him, and he heard me explain my symptoms, and he looked at my foot, and he was the first doctor to really validate me and be like, I don't know what these other doctors are saying. You're 23, you're using a wheelchair.
This is not normal.
This isn't normal.
Yeah.
And he was like, I think you have CRPS. And I was like, what is that?
It was, of course, it's the first time you've ever heard these 4 letters and you're like, what is this?
Exactly. And he explained it, and he told me things to do in the meantime. And then he was like, I'm going to write a letter to your doctor at Kaiser, not the podiatrist, luckily, but my primary care doctor, who I actually liked. She was pretty good. But he was like, I'm going to write a letter to her to be like, Emil has CRPS. This is what you should do. So he did that. And so then my primary care doctor was like, oh my gosh, of course. But I had to get an official diagnosis, I had to see a pain management doctor through Kaiser. So the first meeting I had with him was over Zoom. And to be fair, he couldn't see my foot and whatever, but he was very doubtful that I actually had CRPS.
Okay.
Because he was like, this is rare, you're young, whatever. And I was like explaining all the symptoms. I'm like, okay. And so I was explaining all the symptoms, and he's like, oh, well, maybe, but like come in person. So then in November, I came in person. And of course, he's like, oh, well, you have it. And I'm like, well, yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
And that was also a pretty unpleasant appointment because I'm trying to ask all these questions and all these, like, what should I do? And he wasn't giving, like, he was just kind of like, yeah, well, I don't, like he was kind of not the most responsive. And then at one point I was like, well, the solutions we're talking about seem pretty like Band-Aid solutions. Like, it's not getting to the root of the problem. It's more pain management. So like, how do you get to the root of the problem? How do you get rid of the pain? And then he goes, well, you're going to be in pain for the rest of your life. And I was like, oh, oh, that's cool. Okay. So definitely a lot of unpleasant experiences with doctors.
Yeah.
The diagnosis was not easy because it was going to an outside source and then having him tell my primary doctor, and she was really good about it, but then having to go to a different doctor who I didn't know, and then him doubting me, and then him saying things that were intense and not even, as we know, really true. Like, you're not necessarily going to be in pain the rest of your life if you have CRPS. You can recover. So anyway, long story, but that was my diagnosis experience.
Yeah. I mean, most people that, I talk to every day have the worst diagnosis experiences too. It usually takes them months to actually get a diagnosis, and it's usually a lot of ping pong between a lot of different doctors who always just say, I don't really know what CRPS is, or I don't think you have CRPS, or it's probably something else. And it gets pretty difficult because you're already stressing out because somebody maybe mentioned CRPS and you're not sure if it is, and you probably go on Google and you shouldn't do that, and then you look at all the things about CRPS and you're like, oh my God. And then you just have to wait for someone to say, yes, it is CRPS.
Absolutely.
And it's a super heavy diagnosis to have. What was your reaction to it?
Yeah, I was like, it definitely wasn't a good reaction. Right? I was pretty scared. I was pretty sad. I think it was odd because so my first reaction to it was when I learned what it was from that doctor, who was actually very validating. And I think it was a mixed bag because he was the first person to be like, you're not crazy. Like, this is actually something bigger, and it made sense, right? So like,
so there was a bit of relief.
Yeah, like that was validating to have a doctor finally look me in the eye as a person.
Yeah.
But the diagnosis itself, there were no positive feelings about it. And I'm definitely a case of someone where, like, after the appointment, because he was being as nice as he could, but what my brain was looking for was, how long is this going to take to get better? When is it going to get better? And he couldn't tell me any of those things. So he just kind of avoided that, which I think is kind of smart. Like, he wasn't saying this is never going to get better, but he couldn't say, yeah, you got 6 months, he couldn't say what I was hoping for. So I went immediately to the bathroom and looked it up on my phone, and then was like, oh my God. Then I freaked out, because I also don't think I really understood what no cure means, because no cure doesn't necessarily mean you can't recover. It just means there isn't one way to get better, but I didn't know that. So I kind of was there like, well, this is lifelong then. Like, this is my life now. So I was definitely pretty shaken. But luckily, through talking to people later in the day, like, I went back to work and all my coworkers were really supportive, and talking to my parents, it's like, okay, there are options. Like, I'm not necessarily going to have this for my life. Like, it was just, that was the initial, like you said, like, looking it up, that's what you see. And you see the worst case scenario, so then that's what you think is going to happen.
Yeah, of course. Did you try any treatment in the States?
Yeah, a lot of different things. It was actually, it was a bit overwhelming at first, but very also sweet. So I'm very close with my family, especially my parents and my 2 aunts. And they were both, my parents, of course, were very worried, and my aunts were also very worried. And most members of my family have been through some sort of chronic pain like things. So they all have, not CRPS necessarily, but like, they all have some experience. So what we started doing is we would have Zoom meetings where we would like research all the different treatment options and be like, okay, should Emil go to acupuncture? Should Emil do it? Because as we were learning more about it, we're like, okay, this isn't just a medicalized thing. Like, this is a nervous system thing, this is a mind-body thing as well, as we call it in the States often. So a lot of different treatments were happening. But more recently, which I would say in the States has been my most helpful treatment, this past December, I started seeing a therapist for pain reprocessing therapy, which has been, for me at least, life-changing. Because I'm a pretty anxious person at times, which can contribute to my pain.
100%.
So seeing a therapist once a week, because Kaiser, my insurance, wasn't able to provide that for me. Like, they don't have very good regularity of their providers. So I was seeing a very helpful pain psychologist, but I would only get to see her like once or twice a month. So in the intermediate time, I would just feel kind of lost and be like, I don't really know what to do. But seeing a therapist every week who's like, all right, time to practice this thing, and like, let's talk about this thing. Like, aside from being in Italy, I think that has been the thing I've seen the most results from, for sure. Like, I've it's tough because CRPS, for a lot of people, and for me specifically, has been a very slow, like, I can tell I'm getting better, but it's been very slow. So it's hard sometimes to realize, but I think about like 2 months ago, and I'm like, oh, I'm in a completely different place now than I was 2 months ago. So in the US, at least for me, I found a lot more success with sort of the mind, body, and the therapy community than the medical. They, like, physical therapy has helped a lot too. Once I found a good physical therapist who like understood CRPS. So I would say that as well, which I did more at the beginning when I really couldn't move my foot at all. That was really helpful then. But I would say good physical therapist and good talk therapist in the States.
Did any of the doctors that you saw suggested any other treatments? Like, I know that in the States, usually like nerve block or like spinal cord stimulator, all this, or maybe even ketamine infusions. These are like the go-to treatment options in the States. Did anyone suggest that for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, the pain med doctor who the guy who I didn't like, he was bringing up those things. But when he said nerve block, he was like, well, I have to list all of the potential side effects, and one of them was death. So I was like, not that that's likely, but I was like, well, if death
I'm not gonna take my chances.
yeah, I don't think I'm gonna do it. So, and I had heard of ketamine, but luckily another guidance through this was my uncle, who's the doctor, and maybe it's been helpful for some people, but he was kind of like, I don't know if that's the best. But the thing that actually was kind of helpful, I think the struggle for me was just the availability. Was Kaiser, my insurance, does have a pain management clinic, and within the clinic they do have like a pain psychologist who's teaching me like coping, like anxiety coping, and there's a like biofeedback person who taught me how to calm your nervous system. And so the pain management clinic did have some pretty good resources. I think it was just a matter of, well, if I can only see you once a month, that I need more attention than that. You know, CRPS is intense. But the initial doctor, the med doctor, he kind of connected me with that stuff, but he wasn't really the one to connect me with the helpful resources. He was more the medicalized, like, well, I'll give you these medications, because I was taking gabapentin for a really long time, and nerve block, which I didn't want to do. So yeah.
And so you know, you're pretty young, so I kind of wonder, you know, what was the toll that CRPS had on your life? Like once you understood what it was and you understood it was a long-lasting, a long-term condition, what toll did it have on your life? Like how did it change any of the aspects of your life?
That's a really good question. Honestly, like it changed my whole life. Like I think part of it is, since I'm still getting back into walking regularly, I've been using a mobility device for like 2 years basically. So I use a knee scooter, which is what I was using in Italy, or a wheelchair. And just, I mean, being in the world as someone, using that completely changes your life, because people view you differently, and you get caught. It's weird when you go from being, you know, like not like able to walk and not disabled to, even if it's temporary, being disabled and just being treated completely differently. And definitely too has changed my emotions, like just having to go through something this difficult is like a real test of resilience, I think. And like I am like I don't want to just be a silver lining person, because CRPS is just really hard a lot of the time, but I mean I have grown a lot in the last 2 years. Like I do feel like a completely different person. Like I do feel stronger in myself and more sure of myself and my needs, and able to like advocate for myself more, which is good. And I think part of what's been great about pain reprocessing therapy is it's treating yourself as a whole person. So it's also tending to your emotional needs that come from CRPS. So, you know, I have a lot of anger at doctors and anger at things people on the street will say to me, or anger at things that have happened, and being able to work through that and grow from that has been a really cool experience. So, I mean, the way I relate to my friends and the world is just totally different. And again, I don't want to just be a silver lining person, but it has created some beautiful moments where relationships with people have gotten stronger because I've been vulnerable with them, or like friends who I already loved have further proven themselves as like, well, now they're here for me, and now they help me, you know, get out of the car or whatever, like things that mean a lot that have come to the surface. So it's made life a lot harder, but also deeper, and in both a bad way and a good way, I think. But yeah, I mean, the way I move about the world and think about the world is completely different.
I like the way you think. I think it's very important to, you know, it's super difficult, of course, to keep a positive mindset, but I think finding silver lining in this kind of situation is one of, literally, if you divide the treatment in different kind of pieces of the puzzle. I think one of the pieces of the puzzle is literally trying to see the silver lining and trying to be positive and trying to see the positivity and keep a positive mind. So it's amazing that you have this this state of mind, I think.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. And I definitely, you know, I don't always, right? Like I have my moments where I need to have a meltdown and I need to be mad and upset. And I think that's also very healthy to
Yeah.
like let yourself like I feel like for me how it works is I'm just kind of going about my life and then every once in a while I'll remember how hard it is and I'll just need to like let it out for a bit. And then I
Yeah.
can, you know, and the good news is that used to be a maybe an every week occurrence, whereas now it's maybe every month or few months or so, right?
Yeah.
Like as I'm healing and as I have more hope that I'm going to recover completely, like I'm less of an emotional distress state than I used to. So, but yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like that hope is what helps you survive, really. Like you have to kind of believe you're going to get better because you can't just fall into a pit of despair. I mean, you can, but how do you get out of that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you came to Italy in January 23.
Yeah.
What made you decide to come to Italy?
Yeah, great question. So kind of at that time that in that September when we just found out, my family and I just found out I had this condition and none of us had heard of it before. So we're all doing research and mostly at that point my family was, which I'm very grateful for because as we said, Google is scary.
Yes.
So I was kind of learned to stay away from it and they could kind of parse out what I needed to know, which I would recommend to anyone who has CRPS if you have friends, family, anyone who can help you with that stuff, because you got to take care of yourself.
Yes.
But so your clinic was actually one of the first, I don't know if this is still the case, but was still one of the first things to come up when you Google CRPS, which is really cool. And so both my aunt and my dad separately found your clinic and they were like, oh, that seems really cool. And like, they've done a lot of research on this and there's a lot of like good patient what's the word, patient
testimonials.
Yeah, testimonials, exactly. Yeah. And like I think it was refreshing because a lot of the other things are like doctors being like, what is this, like what's going on, and then your clinic was like, oh, we understand this and here's what we do, and very clear. And so oh sorry, I think there's a cat outside. Anyway, so they told me about it, and then I actually Zoomed, I think it was with Sandra in that September to just kind of learn more about it. And then I think we all just kind of put it to the back of our minds as an option because we were like, well, obviously traveling to Italy is a big deal, and we don't know yet if we need to do that or what's going on.
Yeah.
But, as we had those Zoom meetings where we would go over each of the treatment options, the Italy one was kind of always on the list. And I think part of it for me is I'm very fortunate that I have a family that could afford to send me to Italy, but I also have a lot of guilt with like, oh, well, I don't want my parents to do too much for me, or, like this is a big deal and all these things. But like, I think I just kind of had to realize like, they want me to get better, right? They want to do anything they can for me to get better. If I had a kid, I would do anything I could for them to get better. And my aunt brought up in one of the meetings, she was like, well, if you don't go, right, and you never know if it would have helped, that's not good, right? Like if you can go, you should. Like we should do everything we can to help you. And then that kind of clicked in my brain, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. So then we decided to do it. So yeah, I went that January. And yeah, it was an incredible experience. I'm so glad, so thankful I got to go. So glad I went. Truly a life-changing.
So what were the results then of the treatment for you?
Yeah, so it helped me a lot. So I think around the mark they told me I would start seeing a difference, I did. And I think I was a bit you know, because there's always in the back of your mind, like, is this gonna work? Like, is my body gonna respond? Like, what's really gonna happen? Because at this point, when you have CRPS and nothing's been working, you have so many doubts, right?
Of course.
But so I was at work that spring following the treatment, and it was around March or April when I really started seeing an uptick in my abilities, which was really cool. Like, my physical therapist at the time, who I really liked actually, she was super helpful in the US, and in Italy. Luigi is amazing. But she was having me put my left foot, my CRPS foot, on a scale to see how much weight I could bear. And that was helpful because I could actually see progress. Because sometimes with CRPS, when the progress is really slow, it's hard to tell if anything's really happening. But that was like a quantifiable way to be like, okay, it's January, I can hold 10 pounds on my foot.
Yeah.
Okay, it's February, I can hold 20 pounds, right? And that was about where I was at. Like, January, I think, was like 5 to 10 pounds. But then around 2 to 3 months after the treatment, each week it would be like 10 to 15 more pounds that I could.
Wow.
So it gave me a total jump start. Like, it felt like it just fast forwarded my progress a lot, which was very reassuring to me, because CRPS does move at a snail's pace sometimes. And it took me to where in May of 2023, I took my first steps since not being able to walk, and that was really exciting. Yeah, and that it gave me a lot of hope of like, wow, this is a big step. And it was a sweet story. Was one of my coworkers has become one of my best friends, and has been there for me through a lot of this, and knew me before CRPS and through it and everything. And I when I realized that I could walk a few steps, it was over the weekend at home, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go back to the camp and I'm gonna surprise everyone. I'm gonna show them. And so we were in line waiting to get lunch, and I tapped my friend on the shoulder, and she turned around, and I took a few steps, and she burst into tears. It was really sweet. It was really sweet. That was like, the treatment helped a ton and led to a very hopeful, memorable time, which was really special. So, yeah, and obviously, like, everyone's case with CRPS is different. I'm still not walking regularly yet, but I'm still making a lot of progress, and luckily I'm still moving in an upward trajectory.
Yeah.
It's really good, but the Italy treatment for sure was a big part of getting out of like what felt like a pit, really, like a hole of like, wow, I can barely touch my foot, I can barely move it. Like, I think my dad took a video of me doing physical therapy in Italy where Luigi was moving my foot around very gently and totally fine. But at the time it felt like such a big deal. And then I look back at the video and it was barely moving. Right? And right? Like, it felt like crazy, but I'm like, it was like barely, but now I can like fully bend my foot and put my whole body weight on it. Right. So it's like, yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you a last question. What would be your message for all the CRPS patients listening to us today?
Yeah, I would say what you're going through is really hard, and it's important to let yourself feel that and know that what you're going through is very challenging, but that there is recovery, and there are treatments that will lead to recovery, and that's not what's told to you by a lot of doctors, especially in the States, but more and more research is coming out about that recovery is fully not even possible, but likely. And I would say doing research and figuring out what works for you and your body is very important, but also being easy on yourself and realizing that it may take time. And I mean, at least for me, I can't recommend enough your treatment in Italy, and I can't recommend enough pain reprocessing therapy in the States. Like, if you have any way to access that, I would really recommend it, because at least for me and what I've learned about CRPS is it's very effective in getting to the root of the nervous system and the dysfunction and the anxiety. But yeah, letting yourself be upset, letting yourself feel those feelings, but also having hope, because like you can recover and you will recover.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So thank you so much on these beautiful words of wisdom. We will close this episode of Let's Talk About CRPS. Everyone else, we'll see you next week for the next episode. Emil, thank you so much again for being with me today, and wishing you the best as always, and we'll stay in touch. Okay?
Lovely. Sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Bye, bye, bye.